Lillian was laughing so loudly that people on the other side of the room turned their heads, and for some reason, it made me want to leave the party right then and there. Her laugh, this high, sparkling sound, used to feel like home. Tonight, it felt like a reminder that I didn't belong there, maybe not even with her. I kept pacing near the drinks table, pretending to look busy, until I noticed something on her bag. It wasn't there before. A folded piece of paper, slightly crumpled, pinned under the strap like someone wanted me to see it. My first thought, some dumb party game or a note she accidentally picked up. But my hands were already moving before I could talk myself out of it. I slid the paper into my jacket pocket while she was twirling on the dance floor with a guy I didn't recognize. When I unfolded it later in the bathroom, I had to sit down on the edge of the tub. The handwriting was sharp, rushed, like someone scribbled it in a panic. She's not who you think she is. Check her messages before midnight. I just sat there, staring at it like it was some kind of cursed thing. My hands were shaking, my throat dry, and I didn't know what to do. Go back out there and act normal? Confront her in front of everyone? My brain was spinning. Who would write something like this? And why did it feel like they knew me? When I walked back out, Lillian was leaning against the bar, phone in hand, smiling at her screen like the rest of the party had disappeared. For a second, I thought she saw me watching her because she looked up, startled, and slipped the phone into her bag like a guilty teenager. My chest tightened. That note hasn't left my pocket since. It's like it's burning through the fabric, daring me to look at her phone, to find out what's really going on. But I'm terrified. What if I already know the truth? I didn't sleep that night. The note felt like it had teeth, biting into my thoughts every time I tried to close my eyes. Lillian was asleep beside me, her phone on the nightstand, the screen lighting up every so often with silent notifications. Each buzz was like a hammer hitting my chest. I kept thinking about what the note said. Check her messages before midnight. Midnight had come and gone, but my curiosity was boiling over. I reached for her phone twice, my fingers hovering over it, but both times I pulled back. I hated myself for even thinking about it. I wasn't supposed to be this guy, the suspicious, pathetic husband sneaking around like some B-list detective in his own home. But then I remembered her face at the party, the way she smiled at her screen like it was whispering something meant only for her. Not me. The third time I reached for it, I didn't hesitate. Her phone didn't have a password, which almost felt like a trick now, like she wanted me to believe there was nothing to hide. But there it was. The first message at the top of her chat list stopped me cold. Can't stop thinking about tonight. You looked unreal. It wasn't from anyone I knew. The name just said M. My stomach sank, and I scrolled. There were weeks, no, months, of messages. Some were innocent, just casual jokes. But others, God, I wish I could erase them from my memory. Things like, wish you could sneak away for 5 minutes. I miss that laugh. Or worse, don't let him see you smile like that. It's for me. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. I locked the screen and set it back like nothing happened, but I could barely breathe. My chest felt hollow, like I was floating somewhere outside my own body. She shifted in her sleep, turned toward me, and for a split second, I thought she'd wake up and see the truth written all over my face. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to know who this M was, and why someone at the party wanted me to see it. I needed answers, not just suspicion. So, I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, already planning my next move. If she thought I'd sit quietly while she laughed with him, she was wrong. I wasn't going to ask her for the truth. I was going to find it. The next morning, I acted like everything was fine, though inside I felt like I'd swallowed a glass full of nails. Lillian was in the kitchen humming while making coffee, scrolling through her phone with that little half-smile she gets when she thinks I'm not paying attention. I couldn't stop seeing those messages in my mind, every word carving a deeper crack in whatever trust one thought we still had. I wanted to ask her who M was, but I bit my tongue so hard it almost bled. Confronting her would mean showing my cards, and I wasn't ready for that. I spent most of the day pretending to work in my home office, but really, I was trying to connect the dots. I kept replaying the party in my head, every moment she wasn't near me, every time her phone lit up in her hand. I started to realize something. There was a guy there that night, a man who seemed to always be hovering near her. Not Marcus, but someone else. A quiet one, standing by the sliding doors, sipping whiskey like he owned the place. I remembered the way he watched her, The way she looked back at him when she thought no one was paying attention. It wasn't a friendly look. It was the kind of look that makes your stomach turn cold. I went digging. First, I checked her social media accounts, which were like a gallery of curated happiness, smiles, trips, perfectly staged photos of us that suddenly felt fake. I scrolled until I found a picture from 3 weeks ago, one I didn't even remember being taken. There she was, standing by a fire pit at someone's backyard gathering. And there he was in the background. Same sharp jaw, same piercing look, like he didn't belong in the picture but refused to be erased. The comments were full of jokes and emojis, but one stood out. A simple fire from a profile with a name that started with M. My blood ran cold. I clicked the profile. Nothing. No pictures, no info, just a blank page with a few random likes. A ghost account. It was like whoever he was, he didn't want to be found, or he didn't care if I knew. That night, while Lillian was in the shower, I copied the number from her messages with M onto my phone. I didn't call it, but I saved it under a fake name. I just needed to know who was on the other side of that screen. The urge to text him was eating me alive. Every time I saw her smile at her phone, every time she turned it face down when I walked into the room, it felt like someone was twisting a knife into my ribs. I couldn't just sit there, waiting for her to slip up. I had to do something. By midnight, I'd made up my mind. I was going to find him. I didn't know how, but I wasn't going to wait for Lillian to tell me the truth she clearly wasn't planning to share. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just harmless flirting. This was bigger, darker. And if that note from the party was true, I wasn't even close to understanding how deep this went. I stared at that number in my contacts for hours, like it was a live wire that might shock me if I touched it. Every time Lillian left the room, I'd open my phone, type out a message, then erase it. I didn't even know what I wanted to say. Something threatening? Something casual? What if it wasn't even him? What if it was someone who'd deny everything and tip her off? I felt trapped, like I was standing on the edge of something that, once I crossed, I couldn't come back from. But then I thought about that note, about her smile at the party, about all those messages I had read that weren't meant for me. And I couldn't stop myself. It was past midnight when I finally typed, "Who are you?" No name, no explanation, just those 3 words. My hands were sweating as I hit send. For 5 long minutes, nothing happened. I sat there, heart hammering, staring at the screen like I could will it to light up. And then it did. The reply was instant, unnerving. "You know who I am. Don't pretend you don't." I felt my stomach twist, like I'd just swallowed a stone. Who was this guy? How did he know I'd even seen the messages? I typed back, "Stay away from my wife." I hated how weak it sounded, like I was begging, but I couldn't think straight. His reply came within seconds. "She doesn't belong to you anymore." I nearly dropped the phone. It was such a blunt, cruel thing to read that I had to reread it 3 times just to believe someone could say it. I wanted to scream, to storm into the bedroom and demand that Lillian tell me the truth. But when I looked in at her sleeping, she looked so peaceful, so innocent. It made me feel like I was going insane. Was I? Was I imagining all this, twisting harmless things into something worse? But then I read his last message again and knew this wasn't just in my head. I stayed up all night waiting for him to say more, but he didn't. The silence after those words was louder than anything. By the time morning came, I'd made a decision I wasn't even sure I believed in. I wasn't just going to text him. I was going to find him. I started by scrolling through her messages again when she was in the shower, piecing together any scraps of information. They'd mentioned a spot, a place they'd go back to soon. That was my first clue. By noon, I'd driven past Marcus's house, the party host, looking like a lunatic parked down the street, trying to see if any of the cars from that night were there. I didn't see the man from the photos, but I knew he existed. I could feel him, like a shadow that had been cast over my entire life. That day, I barely spoke to Lillian. She seemed distracted, like she was in her own world anyway, tapping at her phone with that same smile that now made me sick to my stomach. I needed answers, but I needed them my way. Quietly, carefully. I couldn't risk confronting her yet because something told me, deep in my gut, that this was only the surface of whatever game I'd stumbled into. That night, I texted the number again. "Meet me. Tonight. No games." The reply came fast. "If you want the truth, come alone." I drove to the place he told me to meet, an old half-abandoned parking lot behind a strip of closed-down stores on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that made your stomach tighten just pulling in, one flickering streetlight, the rest swallowed by darkness. I killed the engine and sat there gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe some kind of confession, maybe a fight. I didn't even know what I'd say when I saw him. A black SUV pulled in about 5 minutes later, parking 2 spaces away. My pulse was pounding as the driver's door opened. He stepped out, taller than I remembered from the party, with that same quiet, unnerving presence. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, looking at me like he already knew everything I was thinking. "You wanted to meet," he said finally, his voice calm but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "So here I am." I got out of the car, my legs shaky, and I tried to sound stronger than I felt. "Who are you, and why are you texting my wife?" He smirked, not a friendly smirk, but one that said he wasn't afraid of me, not even a little. "Walter, isn't it? You really don't know? She's been lying to you for months." He reached into his pocket, and for a moment I thought he might pull out a weapon. But instead, he pulled out his phone and showed me something, screenshots. Messages, pictures, voice notes. Lillian, smiling into the camera, whispering things I wish I could forget. It felt like someone had ripped the air out of my lungs. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "This isn't real," I said, though my voice cracked and betrayed me. "You faked these. You're messing with me." "Do I look like I'm messing with you?" he asked, his tone sharper now. "You think that note at the party was a coincidence? Someone had to warn you because she wasn't going to. You're the last to know, Walter. Always the last." I wanted to hit him, scream at him, something, anything to break that smug, calm expression, but I froze. Because as much as I hated him in that moment, a part of me believed him. A part of me knew. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "She's not the person you think she is. There's a reason she's been pulling away from you. If you really want to know the truth, follow her. Tomorrow night. She's meeting me. Or at least she thinks she is. Maybe you should see it for yourself." He turned and got back into his SUV before I could even respond, leaving me standing there under the dying light, holding my breath like I'd just survived some kind of explosion. On the way home, I couldn't stop replaying his words, his evidence, his calm certainty. Was he telling the truth, or was this some sick game? I walked into the house and saw Lillian curled up on the couch, scrolling on her phone like nothing was wrong. She looked up, smiled at me, and I almost laughed at how absurd it felt, like we were living in 2 different realities, hers polished and perfect, mine cracking at the seams. I barely slept that night. I kept hearing his voice in my head, telling me to follow her, to see for myself. And the more I thought about it, the more I knew I would. I had to. Because if I didn't, the not knowing would kill me faster than the truth ever could. The next day crawled by like a slow-motion nightmare. Every time I looked at Lillian, I wondered if she could see it in my face, that I knew, or at least that I suspected something beyond what I could handle. She moved around the house like nothing had changed, humming to herself as she cleaned, casually checking her phone with that same secret smile that made my blood run cold. I pretended to be buried in work, but I was watching her every move. I noticed the way she typed on her phone quickly and then turned the screen down on the table when I walked past, her shoulders tensing ever so slightly. It wasn't in my head anymore. I knew it. She told me around 6 that she was going to meet Clara for dinner, her supposed friend from yoga class. I nodded like a fool, forcing a smile, and asked, "Want me to pick you up later?" She just shook her head, too quickly, saying Clara would drive her home. That was my confirmation. I waited until she left, then grabbed my keys and followed her. I kept far enough back so she wouldn't notice me, but my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking the steering wheel. She wasn't heading toward any restaurant I recognized. Instead, she drove toward the industrial part of town, where the streets got darker, quieter, and far less friendly. I followed her into a side street where an old warehouse stood, its paint peeling, windows broken in places. She parked behind the building, and for a second, I thought maybe she was lost, or maybe I'd completely misunderstood everything. But then she got out of the car, and my stomach twisted. She wasn't meeting Clara. She was dressed differently now. She had changed at some point before leaving the house, wearing that black dress I'd never seen her put on for me. She checked her phone, glanced around nervously, then walked toward a side door of the warehouse. And that's when I saw him. He was leaning against the wall, waiting for her, just like he'd said he would. He didn't look surprised to see her. He looked confident, like he owned her. I stayed in my car, watching from the shadows as they talked. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw her laugh, that same laugh from the party, and it cut through me like a knife. Then he touched her arm, and she didn't pull away. She leaned closer. My chest was so tight I could barely breathe. For a moment, I thought about getting out of the car, storming over there, demanding answers. But something stopped me. I don't know if it was fear or maybe just instinct, but I felt like if I walked in there, I wouldn't like what I found. So I stayed. I watched them disappear through the side door, and something in me snapped. I waited 10 minutes. Then 20. Every second was torture. My mind went to places I didn't want to go. Finally, I got out of my car and walked toward the building, my hands shaking, my heart beating like it wanted to tear itself out of my chest. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the air was heavy, like it hadn't been touched in years. I followed the faint sound of voices down a narrow hallway, the light from a single bulb flickering overhead. And then I heard her laugh again, closer this time, but this time it didn't sound happy. It sounded nervous, like something was wrong. I stopped just short of the room where the voices were coming from and listened. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough. I heard her say my name. I heard his voice telling her, "He doesn't deserve to know yet." And then I heard a sound, like a chair scraping against the floor, and my whole body froze. What were they doing in there? I don't know what I expected to see when I pushed that door open, but what I saw wasn't anything I could have imagined. The room was dimly lit, a single dusty lamp in the corner casting long, strange shadows across the floor. Lillian was sitting in a chair in the middle of the room, her hands on her lap, her phone on the floor next to her feet. She looked up at me, and for a moment, there was something like fear in her eyes. Real fear, not the guilty panic I thought I'd see. Standing just a few feet from her was M. He turned when he saw me, and that calm, cold smile spread across his face. "Well, Walter," he said casually, like he'd been expecting me all along. "You're early. We were just talking about you." "Get away from her," I said, my voice cracking, but I stepped forward anyway. My hands were shaking, my throat was dry, but adrenaline was running through me like fire. "What the hell is this? What are you doing with my wife?" Lillian shot up from her chair, moving toward me, but she didn't look guilty. She looked desperate. "Walter, you shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, just go home. It's not what you think." "Not what I think." She was in some half-abandoned warehouse with this guy who's been texting her like he owns her, and I'm supposed to believe it's all innocent? I turned to M, who was just watching me with that infuriatingly calm expression. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want with my wife?" He tilted his head, almost like he was studying me. "You really don't know, do you?" He walked closer, slow and deliberate, like a predator that knows you can't outrun it. "She didn't tell you. She never tells you anything, does she?" "Stop," Lillian said, her voice sharp now. She looked between us, and for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. "This is my fault. Walter, please, let me explain later. Just go home." "Explain what?" I asked, my voice rising. "That you've been sneaking around with him? That you've been lying to me for months?" "She hasn't been lying," M cut in. "She's been protecting you." Those words hit me like a brick. Protecting me? What the hell was he talking about? Before I could ask, he leaned against the table in the corner of the room and picked up something I hadn't noticed before, a small black notebook. He flipped it open and started thumbing through it. "You don't know how deep this goes," he said without looking up. "She's in trouble. And if you keep pushing, you're going to be in trouble too." Lillian stepped between us, her hand on my chest like she was trying to physically keep me from moving any closer. "Walter, listen to me," she said, her voice low and urgent. "You need to leave. Right now. Please." I felt like I was spinning, like the ground was tilting under me. Nothing made sense. Was this all some act? Some twisted game they were playing? Or was there something bigger happening here? Something I couldn't see? I glanced at the notebook in his hands and felt an overwhelming urge to grab it, to rip it open and find out what was inside. But before I could make a move, M closed it with a snap and said, "If you want answers, come back tomorrow night. But come alone, and don't tell her you're coming." The silence that followed was suffocating. Lillian looked at me, her face pale, her lips trembling like she wanted to say something but couldn't. I didn't wait for her to speak. I turned and walked out, my head spinning, my heart pounding like I'd just stepped out of a nightmare I wasn't sure was over. On the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about that notebook, about the way M spoke like he knew something I didn't. And the way Lillian looked at me. It wasn't the look of someone caught cheating. It was something darker. Something like fear. I didn't sleep at all that night. My mind kept circling around the notebook M had closed so casually, the way Lillian's eyes had silently pleaded with me to leave. I wanted to be angry at her, to hate her even, but something about her fear wouldn't let me. It wasn't guilt I saw in her eyes. It was desperation, like she was fighting against something bigger than both of us. By the time the sun rose, I'd made up my mind. I was going back to that warehouse. When I arrived that evening, the place looked even more deserted than before. M was waiting near the entrance, leaning against the wall like he had all the time in the world. He wasn't smirking this time, though. His face was serious. "You came," he said, like it was a test I'd barely passed. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it." He studied me for a moment, then motioned for me to follow. Inside, the notebook sat on the same table, and this time, he slid it toward me. "Read it," he said. I hesitated, but my curiosity overpowered my fear. The pages weren't what I expected. They weren't love notes or secrets about some affair. They were detailed records, names, dates, and strange notes about a man who had been following Lillian for months. A stalker. Someone dangerous. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages and saw grainy printed photos. Photos of Lillian and me taken without our knowledge. At the grocery store, at our house, even through our living room window. My stomach dropped. "What is this?" "This," M said, "is what she's been trying to protect you from. I'm not her lover. I'm a private investigator. Lillian hired me to track this guy before he did something worse. She didn't want you involved because she thought you'd worry, or worse, do something reckless. That note at the party? That was me. I saw him there, watching her. I needed you to start paying attention before it was too late." It took a second for his words to sink in. My chest felt hollow, my face burning with shame as I realized how wrong I'd been. All the anger, all the suspicion, it had all been misdirected. Lillian hadn't been sneaking around on me. She'd been trying to keep me safe. "Where is she?" I asked. "She's at home," M said. "She wanted to tell you everything, but she was afraid you wouldn't believe her." I guess she wasn't wrong. I left the warehouse in a daze, the notebook clutched in my hands like proof of my own stupidity. When I walked into our house, Lillian was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked up, her eyes wet with tears. "Walter," she said softly, "please let me explain." I dropped the notebook on the coffee table, and her face went pale. "You saw it," she whispered. I nodded. "Why didn't you tell me?" She stood, coming closer, her voice breaking. "Because I didn't want you to feel like you couldn't protect me. I wanted to handle it quietly, so you wouldn't have to carry the fear I've been carrying. I thought I was being strong for us." I don't know how long we stood there, but I finally pulled her into my arms, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. We talked for hours, about everything, about the stalker, about the messages, about how far apart we drifted without even noticing. By the time we finished, something had shifted. It felt like we were standing on solid ground again. M helped the police track down the stalker a week later. He's behind bars now, and Lillian and I have been rebuilding, brick by brick. It's not perfect, but it feels real, and for the first time in a long time, I believe we might actually make it. And as strange as it sounds, that crumpled note on her bag, the one that almost tore us apart, ended up saving us instead.